Hey everybody, it's the OMAD Dad. Welcome back to my YouTube channel, a channel that is dedicated to living the OMAD lifestyle or eating just one meal a day. Today I'm back with another book review, and it's a good one. It's Unsavory Truth, How Food Companies Skew the Science of What We Eat by Marion Nestle. A little while back on my YouTube channel, I made a video post about why I choose to eat what I want on my OMAD plan. And one of the main reasons that I gave for this is that many of the new food studies that have been releasing, a lot of these scientific studies, quote unquote, that you're seeing on the news every single day, telling you what food to eat and what food not to eat, are actually backed by little fact and are mostly observational studies. And frankly, many of them are inaccurate or really are put together in a way that would not compel me to change my diet entirely. I've had great success on the OMAD plan, eating the foods that I want. But as the guideline that I've given you, and many other prominent people in the OMAD community have as well, is that your meal should be anything that you can make a meal out of. You know, what you eat on OMAD should be anything that you can make a meal out of. Yes, it's fine every once in a while if you have a processed food, if you go to a fast food restaurant or one of your local pizza places, or even if you have a dessert once in a while. But ultimately, every day you are eating foods that you can collectively make a meal out of. And I found this book, Unsavory Truth by Marion Nestle, and it just kind of further reiterates and hammered home, why many of the food studies that you see that get in the front page, the articles in the newspaper, or that are on the news that make up the news stories that you see at night. This book really goes into details as to why many of them are flawed, and I didn't even realize to the extent that she's been able to investigate just how flawed they are. But it's just an excellent book. I really highly recommend you pick it up, even if you're not doing OMAD. And just reading about how these studies come together, reading about a lot of the flaws that are in this system, and it's not a dry, boring read at all. It was very, very interesting. And so today I wanted to go over some of the best points that she made in her book. And she is a retired NYU professor, and she has written several really, really great books. This is her newest one. And so I want to go over some of the points that she's made, and I really do believe that this will kind of help many of you in your OMAD journey. You have to understand that humans make terrible experimental animals. We cannot be locked in cages and fed controlled diets, at least not long enough to learn anything useful. All of this forces studies of diet and health to be largely observational, as I've said before, rather than experimental, and therefore vulnerable to biases. I am reading little blips and blurbs of her book here just so that you can get kind of a gist of what she's referring to and talking about. Food science is mainly about finding technical solutions to problems related to food products, whereas nutrition science is mainly about the effects of nutrients, foods, and diets on human physiology and health. But marketing research has a different purpose. It's to create and sell food products. Whenever the author sees a study suggesting that a single food, pork, oats, and pears, for example, a single eating pattern, like having breakfast, it's the most important meal of the day, or a single product like beef, diet sodas, chocolate, how these improve your health, you have to look to see who paid for the study. Usually, industry-funded studies produce favorable outcomes for those companies that stand to gain the most from the positive study, while independently funded studies tend to debunk or discredit the claims. One example of these kind of rigged studies is like when Hershey and Mars try to pull out studies of the benefits of the flavonoids in chocolate. We always hear about how healthy dark chocolate is for you and how it's just a superfood. It's a term that I can't stand to hear. To give you an idea of how much you'd have to eat to get a heart-healthy dose of these flavonoids, you'd have to consume 5 ounces of dark chocolate, or at a rate of 750 calories, 26 ounces of chocolate syrup at a rate of 3,170 calories, or 40 ounces of milk chocolate at a rate of 5,850 calories. The calories, fat, and sugar outweigh the positive benefits that it may contain. And worse off, flavonoids are usually destroyed by traditional processing methods. You know, the reality of today's research environment is that it's harshly competitive for university scientists. Their appointment, promotion, tenure, and career advancement depend on winning grants, publishing in prestigious journals, achieving recognition for their research. Typically, university faculty are expected to raise 50 to 60% of their salaries, along with the expense of supplies and equipment. Additionally, the federal government used to fund about half of all food nutrition and agricultural research, but now that figure has declined to around 30%. Industry now funds the rest, and the projects are mostly aimed at product development, product defense, or simply other marketing strategies. However, having said all of that, not all industry studies are bad just because the industry funded them. I see this on vegan YouTube channels. They tend to discredit a study solely because a pro-animal product producing company funded the study. And this is where things really get tricky, is because the real questions to ask are whether the science is supported by other scientists, it's published in peer-reviewed journals, and if these food industry interests align with public health interests. You know, as an eater, you should be wary of media hype about whether fat or sugar is the more important cause of health problems. The question ignores basic principles of nutrition. We eat food, not nutrients, and how much we eat is often as important as what and when we eat. The basic principles of eating healthfully have remained remarkably constant for years, and in her opinion, that advice is to eat a wide variety of relatively unprocessed foods in reasonable amounts. So that is, you know, the gist of why I don't really put a lot of faith into many of these studies. You know, they'll come out and they'll say on the news tonight, oh, well, scientists have determined that, you know, that dark chocolate is now a superfood and everybody should be eating it. And then 2 weeks later, it'll be, nope, another study came out saying it's bad. I see this with coffee. I see it with eggs. It just goes on and on. At some point, you can take any food item that there is out there, find positive benefits and find negative benefits. And, you know, you have to be able to make a decision in your life. You have to be able to choose something to eat. So you do the best you can. You enjoy life. And I don't put too much stock into a lot of these studies. One thing she noticed is that starting in the 50s, the tobacco industry, for example, knowing that cigarette smoking was linked to lung cancer, kind of developed a playbook and relentlessly used these certain key strategies. I'm going to go over which ones that she's outlined here. Usually they cast doubt on the science, fund research to produce desired results, offer gifts and consulting arrangements, use front groups, promote self-regulation, promote personal responsibility as a fundamental issue, and they use the courts to challenge critics and unfavorable regulations. And now, in this same playbook was used since the 60s to exonerate sugar as a factor in heart disease. Recently released documents showed how the Sugar Research Foundation withheld funding from studies suggesting that sugar may be harmful. She has another book that she's written called Food Politics. And in this book, she talked about, like, for example, supplements. You know, and it's shown how little a benefit supplements are when consuming a reasonably varied diet. The supplement industry funds studies demonstrating health benefits of taking one supplement or another, but studies funded independently usually don't concur with them, and they even find that nutrients in pill form can be harmful. Despite the evidence, nearly half of Americans take some version of a different supplement just to compensate for a poor diet. So again, eat real food. You know, she's talked about Coca-Cola's influence on steering society's focus away from diet choices and pushing physical activity. She's actually written a book that I've ordered. I haven't read it yet, but it's called Soda Politics, and it goes into this in real detail, and I can't wait to get into that. But this was interesting. A systematic search for research funded by Coca-Cola or performed by investigators with financial ties to Coca-Cola identified 389 articles published in 169 journals from 2008 to 2016, just an 8-year period. These studies typically concluded that physical activity is more effective than diet and weight control, that sugars and soft drinks are harmless, Evidence to the contrary is wrong, and industry-funded research is superior to that funded by other sources. So there goes that playbook again that I just spoke about. So, I mean, there you go, folks. Ultimately, you have to take these quote-unquote studies with a grain of salt, use a little bit of common sense, and don't be afraid to experiment in your life to see what really works for you. If you notice that every time you have something with gluten, for example, that you personally, get really bloated, you have, arthritic symptoms or whatever, and some sort of reaction, and then you take gluten out of your diet and you remarkably improve and feel better, well, then maybe gluten isn't for you. You don't necessarily need a food study to tell you that, no, you need to be having this grain in your diet, or, whatever the case may be. But Unsavory Truth, overall, if you're looking for a really interesting book, a really good read that's not too technical, and it's not dry at all, as I've said before, then you really should check this out. It's by Marion Nestle, and it'll definitely change your perspective the next time you're watching the news and you hear something of the works of, the newscaster saying, recent study released this week shown blank to be, you'll hear that and you'll just go, okay, let me look up the study and see what it says and see what type of study it was, or, I'll just, kind of walk out of the room at that point, because I know that the study that they've released is probably observational and very biased anyway. But again, as I've said, what's tricky is that sometimes there are really good studies released. Sometimes we do learn new things. So ultimately picking through all of this it can be a very tedious process. I elect to not pick through it at all and to not do this process and to just eat real food. I'll tell you, Michael Pollan, who's another food researcher and author, when asked about what he felt was the perfect diet, he had the quote, "Eat real food, not too much." And I think if you do that, you're going to set yourself up for a lot of success in your life and a long, healthy life. So that is it for me, folks. I hope you got something out of this post today. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you are having a very great week, a very happy OMAD, and be well.